All right, hello everyone. Today, we are talking about crisis management in real estate. I would like to welcome my listeners and viewers in the United States and all around the world. I am Vince Rocco, and it is Tuesday morning here in New York City, so let's go behind the headlines and get the real story. But first, this is Talking New York Real Estate. And up front today, crisis management in New York City real estate involves a multifaceted approach to navigate and mitigate the impacts of unexpected disruptions. Given the city's dense population, high property values, complex regulatory environment, and Mother Nature, real estate professionals must be adept at addressing crises ranging from weather, economic downturns, and market volatility. Effective crisis management requires rapid response strategies, comprehensive risk assessments, and strong communication channels among stakeholders. Ultimately, the resilience of New York City's real estate sector depends on its ability to adapt and respond swiftly to crises, ensuring the safety and stability of properties and their occupants. We will discuss, and we will have all that and so much more as Talking New York Real Estate gets underway on this very warm Tuesday morning here in New York City. And in the news this morning, the NASDAQ finished, according to our chief economist, Greg Heim here, the NASDAQ finished the week at a record high. Weekly jobless claims rose to a 10-month high. Consumer sentiment fell for the third straight month. Small business sentiment rose, though, to its highest level of 2024 in the month of May. Mortgage rates fell for the second straight week. And on that note, the Fed Reserve is keeping interest rates at their current levels and projecting just one rate cut this year. This is according to the central bank, and it was announced last week. The decision comes just hours after key government inflation reports showed that price pressures are slowly easing for consumers, even though the Fed officials project that its trend is not yet solidified. And Ethan Hawke's former Chelsea townhouse has sold for $6.3 million, more than $300,000 above its initial asking price. The all-cash deal followed a bidding war with multiple offers over the $5.98 million asking price. The brokers showed the house a mere 2 weeks only. And by the way, we hear that all of the bidders were local families in the neighborhood. The red brick residences at 353 West 21st Street is in a landmark district. At 21 feet wide, the 3,600-foot home comes with 6 bedrooms, 4.5 baths, and lots of built-ins. And a lot of what Hawk had in days he lived there, a red fridge and mustard yellow cabinetry in the eating kitchen. I can't even imagine that. And finally, dozens of survivors of the Sandy Hook Elementary School tragedy became high school graduates last week. Yay! The Newtown High School graduation started with a tribute to the 21st graders who were gunned down by a madman at the school on December 14th in 2012. Their names were read aloud, followed by a moment of silence. Gun violence in this country is real and must be stopped. This is an American tragedy. God bless those children and their futures. And for those who died that day, may they rest in peace and may their memories be a blessing. Oh, I can't even get through that. With me today are David Rodriguez, Loan Depot Financial, Louise Phillips Forbes, Brown Harris Stevens, Matt Mellinger, Brown Harris Stevens, and Doug Williford joining us for the first time also from Brown Harris Stevens.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
All right, good morning, everyone. We are back. So today we're talking about crisis management in New York City real estate. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all bad, okay? There are things that happen in our business. There are things that don't happen in our business regularly or whatever. But oftentimes, we have to deal with situations probably in the real estate industry more than we ever have to deal with in your corporate world or wherever else you work. I know, coming from corporate America, it was very bland, very routine, sit in front of your computer all day long, drink coffee, go home, and start again the next day. Well, that is not what we do in real estate. Matt, I want to start with you. What are the most common types, though, of crises that often affect New York City real estate? I mean, across the board, or the market more in general. And how do we typically identify them? And then, of course, how do we fix them?
So I think there's two main subsets to that. One would be macroeconomic crises, if you will, such as a wild fluctuation of interest rates or a market event that causes ripple effects into the real estate market itself. The second, and I think the more sort of pinpointed crisis management involves individual transactions. And the interesting part about this business is no two deals are exactly the same. When you're dealing with a sudden event like, discovery of mold, a leak, something in a deal that's already in contract where you need to remedy a situation, do it properly and legally, and get the deal closed without upending the entire thing. That's when the real crisis management comes into play for this industry.
Yeah, when I teach due diligence in continuing ed, we call it a broker's guide to due diligence because most agents think that, oh, no, due diligence, contract went out, deal sheet went out. It's all up to the attorneys. I'm taking a back seat. No.
Right.
No, because what happens is when there is a crisis and when things blow up, and it blows up 100% of the time, we have to fix it. So you're right on with that. Louise, let me ask you, do you consider the current market downturn and the overall, market slowdown as something that can be considered or fall under this crisis management headline, or is it just, happens to be one of those times?
I think that they are components of it that could be considered, unknown territory that we approach as they create and revise safety codes, have a cause and effect, and how the rating systems for the buildings. You have a not a good rating. Can that affect what your financing can be? I do believe that we have a city. We're vertical. We're not horizontal. We're a vertical city.
Absolutely.
So when you live on top of one another, there is a need, and I think that we have an event that happened in Miami, the building that collapsed, has had a cause and effect to what's happening and how the banks want to handle it. They do not want to leave the responsibilities just in the board. They want to mandate that a board prepare for future improvements.
Well, that episode down there set off a whole bunch of flares.
So I don't consider this downturn crisis. I think that transparency, knowledge, not just one-on-one, what's right for one person is not always right for another person. So I would say to you that I don't feel like we're in a crisis mode. I feel like we're in a shift of a market that is caused by the interest rates and the expectations of them pulling back. And that pause has caused people to question their decisions.
Doug, let me ask you, so based on what Louise just said, what are the primary threats that New York City buildings face in times of, crises? Whether it's a local law 11 problem with local law, 97 now coming out with, that's what kind of stuff do buildings face? We all live in buildings. Some of us are on boards. Some of us are not on boards. We all have, people who live in private homes worry about their private home, and it's a lot easier than worrying about, stack on top of stack in a vertical situation where you have hundreds of families living with you, right?
Sure.
So we have to be mindful of everything.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things we have to think about?
Look, we normally work in the selling these apartments within these
Right.
buildings on a day-to-day basis.
Not
But if you're
property
looking at-
management.
Exactly, not property management. But if you look at these buildings and the collections of people in those buildings, those are what we have to look down the road for. You mentioned local law 11. Like, how do we keep this building safe? And how do we make sure that we don't get to crisis mode? Louise mentioned the new regulations that are coming into place that buildings are now under to make sure that they are obligated to look down the road and make sure that this building is safe for people inside the building and outside the building walking past the building. Local Law 97 is another law that's making sure that the buildings that we have in now are energy efficient and that are have us living with the efficiency that we need to be living 20 years down the road. I think if you look at the two of those together, it gives you a good example of what these buildings' responsibilities are. We have to make sure that the building is safe now. We have to make sure we're being fiscally responsible down the road. And we have to make sure that on a day-to-day basis, this is a living, breathing, I always say that buildings are living and breathing as well, right?
Right.
Because you've got gas going into the building, you've got water going into the building, you've got electricity going into the building with people, and you've got renovations going on, and you've got the building is aging every day.
Correct.
And you've got trash going in and out of this building.
Right.
So, and plus you've got hundreds of people in the building who all have to interact with each other and remain, both safe and civil with each other. That's a lot of responsibility for each building, and there's a chance for crisis every single day, and we hope that with the right management in place and with the right boards in place and with the right people, sort of like making decisions for the building, that you can avoid the crisis and not have to get to the point of like.
But
oh
I
my
think
God,
as
how do we
New
deal with that?
Yorkers, though, aren't we all kind of set up for a crisis to happen anywhere,
Yeah.
anytime, whether it's in a building, whether it's on the streets? I mean, that's part of what, is in our DNA as
course.
New Yorkers. I agree with you.
I
But
walked out of my gym this morning, and there was a woman on the floor outside with her walker outside the elevator outside my gym. So it's like
Right.
crisis mode. Like, how do we
Right.
Right,
take care of this
right.
person?
Right.
We're human beings, and we're all personal crises every day. So you're right. We're wired for it, but we're also wired to spring into action as New Yorkers.
100%. Funny note, my building, we just put up scaffolding again about 3 or 4 months ago in my building. Now, I think local law 11's every, 7 years?
5 to 7. 5 to 7.
Okay,
You have
5
to
to
do
7.
The testing.
Well, we took it down 4 years ago, so now we're back up again. So that's a crisis to me, okay? I don't like scaffolding. I don't like walking under scaffolding when, and I'm a dog lover. People walk their dogs, they pee and they poop and it stinks and whatever. And I said to the building, super the other day, I said, we just took this down 4 years ago. Did we not get it right the last time? Well, he says, I can't really say. Okay, you answered my question. We didn't get it right the first time, so we got to do it again.
Yeah, but I also
4 years
think that
later.
you realize that there's probing that happens, and there's also they mandated it when they changed from local law 10 to 11. They used to only do one facade every 5 years. So in 20 years, you're checking out. But what was happening is little trembles that occurred in the city. There were bricks falling off, so they upgraded it to local law 11.
Correct.
And we just did an overhaul, and you see across the city all these scrimmed buildings because at some point there's more than what can be done in one series.
What I didn't finish my story with was when the scaffolding was up 4 years ago, okay, probably 5 years ago, I was laying in bed one Sunday morning, relaxing before I was needing to go to an open house or whatever, start my Sunday morning, right? And all of a sudden, I hear this loud crash, bang. It sounded like bricks falling and crashing to the scaffolding, the bridge or whatever they call it. And I thought, wow, what the hell is that? Now, I looked out the window, but I couldn't see the corner. It was the front-facing corner. So got myself ready, went, got downstairs to go to work, and I asked the doorman, of course, downstairs in the lobby, they were all running all over the place. Something happened, and that whole side of my building just collapsed.
The scaffolding or the building?
No, the
building.
brick, the building.
Yeah.
All on top of, thank God they had the bridges, up, whatever they call that, because people, if they were walking underneath them, it was early in the morning, would have been killed. So
it's back up.
it's now back up again because maybe there was a little brick that started dancing again, and people said, oops, maybe this is not going to work. Let's fix this. David, my financial guru here. Semi-regular, always great to see you.
Thank you.
Give us a little bit about whatever financial crises are happening in the market today. Because, we have all kinds of stuff going
Yeah.
on. But from a financial perspective, what's up?
Well, there's always something going on in the finance world, right? So we can look back to what are banks doing with the buildings? So, for example, that's the biggest one. So these government subsidized entities, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they're the ones that buy most of the loans under 1.1 million in New York City and around 760,000 around the country. But they're the ones that keep the financial machine running for home ownership in the U.S., right? They buy all these loans from the banks, so the banks don't have to tie up their balance sheets. They set the guidelines for the industry. So they're kind of like, I call it the gospel or whatever you want to, I'm not religious, but whatever, right? And so whenever they come out with a new guideline, most of the banks follow it. No matter if you're a portfolio lender, no matter if you're doing jumbo loans and not even selling to Fannie Mae. You could have a client that walks on water, but if Fannie Mae doesn't like something, most risk managers of most banks are like, we're not touching it if Fannie Mae, who sets industry guidelines, are going against it, right? We're not going to go against it.
Because they can't sell it. They can't sell it to the secondary market.
But most of so even let's take like a $3 million buyer, right? They are a jumbo loan. That loan's staying on the bank's books, and they want it to because if they keep that loan, they can now go after that client to try to bring assets to the bank, right?
Of course.
So but still, the credit risk officers of those banks they're not risky on retail side. They're more risky on investment banking, things like that. But on retail, has to be grade A paper, clean, right? So what you're seeing is after the terrible collapse of the Miami Surfside condo, Fannie Mae came out and said, we want to see engineers' reports. And so for us, on the banking side, we were like, oh, it's only if the board orders an engineer's report. And then they came out last September and they said, hold up, we're gonna expand this. If the municipality has done a review, we consider that an engineer's report and we want to see it. So co-ops the last 3 years, condos the last 5 years. That's what they want to see. So when they see the municipality engineer's report, aka Local Law 11, and there's 3 designations for Local Law 11. There's safe with the repair and maintenance plan, or SWARP. I'm not going to do my joke. And then unsafe, right? And so Fannie Mae says if it's unsafe, they will not buy the loan.
Okay, so, sorry.
Yes.
I have a situation right now where I have an unsafe designation. So it is my opinion that the board and the management, there need educating from the banks.
Correct.
That says, here's what you need to do for us to accommodate financing for your owners, which is a letter from the board, from management that says, hey, we have $2 million. This is how we're paying for it. This is what our plan is.
Correct.
Is that the only thing?
So-
Because I have mortgage brokers on that deal asking me for the engineer's reports, this.
That's a good question.
And
Okay.
the building is not going to give it to them.
Correct. So this is the hardest part. Enter crisis mode. We talked about this is the whole point of this.
I'm in crisis.
We're in crisis, right? So I have 6 deals like that right now, right? And so I had to go to our bank and say, I need us to find investors that are willing to buy these type of loans if we can provide that the building's currently safe, meaning it's not going to fall down. We can confirm that they have a budget, right, that to pay for this,
They
and
have
that
a flip
the work
tax, they have operating budget, they have
correct, and that the work is in process and when it's going to be completed. Now, how do we do that? We have to get an engineer's letter. We have to show the money's in place. We have to get confirmation that it's, so there's a lot that has to go into. So now my job has gone from financial guru to therapist to now I'm an engineer. And that's been the hardest part with this unsafe building thing, is because Fannie's not going to buy it. And the banks, they're all scared to do an exception on these buildings because that unsafe title is scary, right?
Right.
And then when we go to these boards and they're like, we're not going to give you anything. And then I have to be really polite. And I'm like, I understand you. Every bank's going to decline you. And now the values in your property are going to go down because only cash buyers can go there. And that's when they freak out. And suddenly, whoosh, the documents come.
Okay, but that's going to be separating men.
My hands.
Men. Are you Italian?
I
But it separates the men from the boys in our business.
I'm not going to say.
Don't even
Ray.
I got it. I locked it in.
Never mind. Sorry about that.
Correct. And so that's the thing, is a lot of people are shying away from this. For example, and I want to mention a very important word. The Fannie Mae does not like deferred maintenance. What is that? It means we're kicking the can down the road. Right. So if you look at Surfside, I talked about this last time. Surfside, it was a lot of investor concentrated unit owners. Every time they wanted to do a repair, all the unit owners would vote to say, we'll do it later. Deferred maintenance. You gotta fix it.
But that was like 15 years of deferred maintenance.
Correct.
Well, but that's correct. But just a quick question before we go to break. How quickly, though, do buildings respond to banks saying, hey, we're not going to lend here for these reasons?
I have to twist a lot of arms, and it is a lot. Like, I'm sending videos now. Like, I'm getting in front of it so aggressively where
Videos of what?
I'm sending a video of me saying, here's what's going on. You have to listen to this. It is 5 minutes. And I go through everything. What is Local Law 11? What happened? Why the banks did it? What are banks going to require to get over?
Can I have that video?
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
never thought to do a video.
Oh, I do videos all the time because nobody wants to listen to me or read a long email.
I just had this happen.
Yeah.
The deal finally closed literally last Friday, but we were delayed 3 to 5 weeks because at the last minute, the lender who had previously approved the building and issued a loan commitment 2 weeks before we were set to close, decided that they had an insufficient insurance policy. They were requiring an engineer report. We're in this weird time of year where it's our busiest time of year for closings, but financials for the previous year are typically
quite
not
not
available
done.
because they usually come out sometime
Late.
between. It could be any time between April and November.
And here's
of
the problem:
following
every
year.
bank's
Absolutely.
going wild west. So some banks may want minutes, some banks want
They
balance
wanted
sheets.
everything.
Yeah,
they
want
wanted
DNA
everything.
samples.
They want
and the board
So-
wouldn't provide it.
So who's the new First Republic bank that's
Nobody.
doing?
So it's going to be every bank is situational. So like all the depository lenders, those credit risk managers have not gotten on board. You're going to start seeing mid-tier banks may do it on exception.
Give me
and
an
then
example of a mid-tier.
All right, hold. You know what? Let's take a quick break. We'll come back in a few minutes. We got to fix
I
this mic
talk
because it
too
keeps
much.
dropping. You know, the mic drop. Okay. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. Everyone is staying here. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business. And it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So, David, complete your thought, please, before I rudely interrupted you. But we did fix the mic. We're done.
fixed the mic.
We did.
So basically, you're going to see. There was a great question asked on the break. So what banks are going to allow this? What banks are not? So right now, it all depends on the credit risk manager of every single bank. And whenever we're in these pivots, these markets that are pivoting, you're going to see most of the banks scale back. They don't want to take a high risk in a market that's not exactly fluid, right? When we start seeing things go crazy and there's a lot more capacity.
Pulling back of the interest rates are going to have a cause and effect.
Exactly. Now we're going to see banks loosen up because if you think about it, if you have 100 loans, but you have 20 of them with local law 11 issues, that's 20% risk. But if you have 500 loans and only 20 of them with local law 11, now it's a much lower risk, and they're like, screw it, we'll take it.
But it can't possibly be that little. Everybody is affected by this.
Everyone. So this is my crisis,
and
right?
remember that, when you look at the market, we had a construction boom in 2000, from 2000 through probably the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And the events that have occurred with that have caused the 100-year-old buildings to be, it's not the only product.
Correct.
But that's the product that's affected. I mean, you have.
So let's go to Williamsburg, my favorite. Like, I live there. So when you look at Williamsburg, go back to 2008 to 2012, right? Remember all the product that got built?
Yeah.
And do you remember there was only one bank that was financing those new developments because Fannie Mae would not finance there. We called it a non-warrantable. That's Fannie Mae's way of saying, I'm not buying this, right? And after 2012, more banks started getting in, and that's when we saw boom, right? You saw $700,000 one bedrooms go to 1.2.
Yes.
And so,
yes.
So that was the crisis. When there's not a lending product, you see a restriction, and that's what I'm concerned about, and what we're trying to lobby for, and what we're going to our credit risk managers to go to Fannie Mae and Freddie and say, we already have an issue with inventory, and this is our market, and now you're restricting it by this local law 11. If I can show that a building, frankly, is unsafe, but they have these plans in place, we should be able to do exceptions on it, and you should buy it. But they're trying to send a message exactly to what you said earlier, like they're saying, hey, industry, this is it. You got to do it. Same thing in 2012. Remember when the budgets came out? When they said you have to have 10% of a line item on the budget for 10% of the income going towards reserves, and all the banks, we couldn't lend on half the buildings, and then suddenly the banks figured out products.
I
right?
often wondered how they could get away with that because most buildings did not do that or could not do that,
Correct.
right? And so as a result, people couldn't get financing and people couldn't buy these buildings. How do buildings resurrect themselves from whatever the crisis may be, or whether it's financial, whether it's local law 11, 97, whatever it is? How do they get themselves back out there
So I think
in a solid way?
A lot of these newer, more stringent guidelines are sort of weeding out the proactive from the reactive buildings. And I think as, especially on the buyer's rep side, that is making our jobs a little bit easier because part of what we're tasked with doing is making sure that our clients are making a sound investment. And 6-7 years ago, it was a little bit more difficult to suss out a building that might have been a little bit more delinquent in what they were slating for capital improvement projects, for example, or pushing off deferred maintenance. Now you have a lot more of a broader scope and latitude in what you can suss out during a due diligence initiative. And I think that's incredibly important.
The information,
the access to the information is so wide-reaching. I did a deal last year where I was representing the buyers, and their attorney had asked for 7 years of minutes, which, that's, if anyone's done
Good luck.
due diligence, yeah. Well, no, we got it done, but management looked at me like, what, are you serious? Like, where are we supposed to get that? I'm like, well, you've been managing the building for the last 15 years. You have it. Just hand it over.
And that's the first time I've heard that.
But what they're looking, that was extreme. I mean, I usually see 1 to 2 years worth of minutes.
Correct,
Good.
maybe 3.
But they wanted to see the evolution of it was a post-war 1950s white brick co-op. These are the ones that are
The sleeper buildings.
exactly. They're the ones that have been flying under the radar because it was quality construction at the
Absolutely.
time. It obviously held up for the last 30, 40 years, and now you're starting to see cracks in the facade, no pun intended. But it's
Or
it's
bricks
beyond that.
falling
It's-
off a building.
It's the roof. It's the mechanicals. It's local law 97 converting to natural gas. There's all these things that these buildings, more so than the pre-wars, which are local law 11 is obviously the biggest issue with an older limestone facade building. But these I also equate it to buildings that were built in the late 80s, early 90s, especially like on the Upper West Side and Upper East Sides. Those buildings were the first
Not the best
era.
construction.
Exactly.
Right.
So
They're
those
not.
buildings were thrown up overnight.
Yep.
There were very little standards in terms of construction quality standards. And like I live in a building right now that was built in between 89 and 91. And every other week there is another problem. Our monthlies have gone through the roof. But why is it? It's because there was a very relaxed board for the last 20 years that was not addressing maintenance and problems, and now it's becoming
Well, as David said before,
unraveling.
deferring the maintenance need and
Exactly.
pushing it out. Well, we don't need to do that right now, or maybe we don't have enough money
Exactly.
to do that right now, so
but
push it
but
out.
we now can see very clearly which buildings have had diligent, proactive,
Correct.
conservative boards who have effectively navigated and managed the building, not only from a financial perspective, but from a mechanical and infrastructure perspective, which is becoming more and more pertinent every single year to the long-term price appreciation on an
On
apartment.
a building. Yeah. I will just say that I found that the best way for me to make a difference in some of these environments and situations is to offer to meet with the board. So I've sold somebody an apartment. They get on the board. They become the board president. And then I am saying, let me come in, let me talk to you all about what I am seeing in the market. Modifying what they allow in renovations is one way to, not allowing people to do combinations. Some of these philosophies are not going to help build wealth and also encourage investing in the assets. But it's also managing agents don't lead their board. They follow their direction as opposed to educating them. And I mean, like all of this stuff on the energy ratings in my own building, Landmark was going to mandate us to change all the terracotta from the 6th floor down. We couldn't even find anybody in the country, much less the world, that would do the gargoyles and all
Well,
of this
that's part of
etching.
the problem.
And we were able to they allowed us to do castings, fiberglass castings, as opposed to limestone. It saved us $2.5 million.
By the way, the fact you know all this is impressive.
No,
Well-
we have to know that.
I'm like,
But-
this
but
is
this
insane.
We're
is-
talking about
but-
Louise Phillips Forbes.
No,
Hello.
my point is that knowledge is power, and
Yeah.
if you happen to be sitting in a fiduciary responsible, who's teaching you that?
Yeah.
Right.
I think you made a great point, and I think the onus is not solely on the managing agent, but
It's on the people.
It's on the people that
Your
reside in the building. But
relationships.
the managing agents
And the
good
board,
managing
who are the
look,
people in the building.
right? And
Right?
everyone always complains about the managing agents in the building. It's always hard to find one that's perfectly suited for exactly what the building's needs and wants are. But for a managing agent to lead the charge rather than take a more passive role and just do the audited financials and process applications, that's what effective crisis management is all about, because the board is made up of people who have day jobs right? For the most part, that is not their sole responsibility.
And some of them don't
some-
have power anywhere else in their lives.
Exactly.
So that's where they want to have it.
But
Well,
the managing
big
agent,
time.
the managing agent should be the sort of the overseeing body and not a supporting actor in the equation. That's really what separates the buildings that are effective at crisis management from buildings who have taken more of a passive role and are probably or already regretting it when something comes up that requires immediate action.
Doug, you manage a lot of agents, and so as we talked about before, part of crisis or crises that happen in real estate are deals.
Right.
So when your agents come to you and they say, this fell apart or this is happening or what do I do about this, what kind of issues are they telling you about, in a crisis mode, or why the deal isn't moving forward or why the deal is potentially falling apart, and how do they mitigate that?
Yeah.
Or who mitigates that?
Wow, in 2024, it comes from every direction, right, Louis?
Yeah.
I mean, it can be, the most common these days is there are financing issues that come at them, and at the last moment, and honestly, swamp is, I know, not to beat a dead horse, comes up so often these days. They get down the road and suddenly they find out at the 11th hour that the bank is pulling out of the mortgage, so you have to scramble to find a replacement. But I find that what's really interesting is that, for the most part, a lot of the crises that occur happen at a very personal level, and it happens between the principals or between the agents as we go along over.
That's a good
we
point
have
because that's
navigated-
difficult to fix.
Right, we've navigated the Atlantic Ocean, and we can side of the shore, and then somehow,
Something
a
tiny.
disagreement over like $3,000 worth of furniture, or I need a $1,500 replacement of a fixture in a bathroom can suddenly cause the whole thing to fall apart. Meaning that people just aren't willing to give that one little step. So,
Right.
so I think the question is like, how do we mitigate that? How do we navigate that? And I just think
Therapy.
I just think the answer there is always just keep the deal in mind. I mean, if we're talking, mostly real estate professionals here, just need somehow people always want to when you get in crisis mode. There's a response that people have is I want to punish. Like I want to stop right now and punish that person on their side, or make sure that they understand.
Yeah,
my point of view.
rising above that, and reminding the bigger picture, keeping your eye on the ball.
Keep
for
the
sure.
deal in mind, and
Right.
you'll
Right.
you can do punishing later. But just how do we fix this right now? Like
Right.
what are the facts? How do we get from point A to point B?
Right.
And then do all the punishing later.
Well, Louise, I was going to ask you too, because how do we as real estate professionals, as Doug just said, keep the deal in focus by managing all of the elements within the deal that may go awry, but more importantly, how do we keep our relationships with our clients, whether they're our seller, whether they're our buyer, in check? Because half the problems with most of the deals that we experience are people problems, as you say,
the
right? So
particular
how do
deal-
you do that?
The particular deal that I've talked about earlier, I have almost $350,000 above the asking price, and I had 7 offers, and I did not take a cash deal because we took the higher deal. They were not doing the deal contingent. This just came up. So my owner was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, we've been waiting for 4 weeks for you to get us a copy of the will for the estate." So, it's like we are where we are. So we need to be in the solution. So I picked up the phone. I called the broker. I was like, "Who's your mortgage guy?" It's somebody I trust, respect. So now, how do we get through this together? I said, because I don't think it's going to be difficult for me to get a contingency to what they're asking for. They're asking for something that they don't have control over. And it's unreasonable for us to have a hard line, in my opinion. So we have to figure out how to be in the solution and give on all sides. And we have to be in it together to win it.
I just think
So
agents are. Once you get to there, agents are partners. Like
Yes,
if you have an
and-
agent on
and-
two sides of this deal, you're no longer competing.
And their
You
response,
are business
yes,
partners.
and the response was, "Thank you for not threatening us," because I do have 7 offers. But that's not the solution. I mean, it may ultimately be. Believe me, I'm back checking to make sure they're still around. But I want to be in the solution because that's the right way to work through it, and that's how you build relationships where you know, when we have an issue, we're going to get through it.
Exactly.
And it's like, if you have 5 other offers, you're going to try to work with me because I'm always in the solution, and I don't have an ego. I mean, I
think
can.
it's
Matt,
really-
following on what Louise just said, okay, correctly, but so part of it is buyers and sellers that we're managing and working with. But what about your co-brokers? The other agents that you are working with in a deal that may not always see things your way, or may end up being combative, or not add to the fixing of a deal.
I think, at the end of the day, you need to keep reminding yourself that the minute you become adversarial is the minute you start doing a disservice to your clients, not just the other side.
Correct.
And I know at the end of the day, we have to act in our client's best interest, and that is first and foremost. But when there is a crisis, or when there's a disagreement or a last-minute issue, and both sides begin to either dig in their heels, butt heads, or otherwise, a lot of people tend to sort of withdraw and hide behind the contract or their attorneys, because these things can blow up into a legal issue very easily and very quickly if the wrong thing is said or the wrong action is taken.
Absolutely.
When you start to sort of huddle behind the attorneys, and look, I have a lot of respect for the attorneys out there. I don't want to offend anybody, but lawyers are going to lawyer. And that, to me, when the communication breaks down between the brokers and it becomes an attorney issue, I hate when a broker responds to me on a deal,
Let the
attorneys deal with it. I say absolutely not, because more times than not, you are going to create more problems because the attorneys have a totally different perspective. And as Bess and Hall say all the time, real estate is a relationship business. It's
100%.
It's our job to maintain a relationship and manage expectations. And the minute the brokers stop talking, that automatically, doesn't matter where you are in the process, puts things in jeopardy. So
And also the inflection and the tone of how somebody's communicating in email does not convey
100%.
on the phone.
I was
Oh,
just about to say,
forget
it's
it.
really important to know when to stop with the emails and the text and pick up the
Yes.
phone and say, I think we've blown
Amen.
sideways here.
Amen.
And then
that's-
it's
I mean,
as
that's
per
how-
our conversation. Pop, pop, pop.
That's
Here's
how.
what I was
That's
saying.
how a lot of
But
issues
the
start.
younger folk today in our business don't want to deal with the telephone.
bad.
I have
Okay,
literally had people
I agree.
go, I've had people say you need to call them. Oh, I texted them. I know, but you need to call them. I sent them an email.
don't get me started with
Okay,
text,
You
please.
need to call them because
Guess
you're
what I'm
not gonna
doing?
Get past this.
Video text.
Yeah.
So I am sending a video text and I'm saying, "Hey, honey, we got an issue. This is it." And that way, I can. They need to
You're
see
not the
Yeah,
issue.
I'm like, they need to see what is going
But you're
on.
looking at
You
me,
know, like,
okay.
They have to see my face, and there's so many times like when
That's
we have
pretty smart.
Yeah, but you have to do it. So like when I have attorneys that don't want to answer the phone either, I tell with a buyer's permission, or my borrower's permission, I'll say, "Can I speak to the seller's side?" And they'll say, obviously yes. And I'll get our buyer's attorney on with the listing agent, the listing agent never wants to get involved, as you mentioned. And so I get on with the seller's attorney and I say, "Listen, here's the deal." I'll do it on Zoom, right? And I want them to see my face, because I want them to see that I'm not just like passing this off. I am getting knee deep in however.
I am a real person.
Correct. And I want them to see, and I talk to the other side, because if I talk to the other side and they hear what's coming from the banker, they see the plan. A lot of times that seller's attorney will actually talk the listing agent off the ledge and get them involved in the right way. So that's what we have to do. Everything about the relationship is.
It's all about relationship.
I know it's super old school, but I've gone as far as to meet in person. When I feel like the phone isn't
Yes.
even enough,
Yes.
I will actually set up an in-person meeting, go for coffee. I've shown up when we have issues with managing agents. I've literally shown up at the front desk asking to speak with the transfer agent or the property manager, and
That's
they're always
big.
looking at me like, what is he doing?
But you know what?
But you know what? I've resolved something that could have taken 2 weeks in 1 hour.
But you know what? That's so important, though. It's beyond the deal. It's beyond that, because if you shrink away from that instead, that approach is so great. You shrink away from it, and the problem gets resolved possibly on the side, and it sort of like becomes the lawyer's issue and not yours.
2.5
You're not-
weeks later.
You're not part of the solution.
Or longer.
So which means that these people at the end of this, when they're at the closing table, when the whole thing is finally done and over, you're not the hero. You're not the person that helped. You're the person that ran away.
Right.
And you're not going to get that referral down the road.
Yep.
You're not the problem solver. You're not the person that was there for them. So it
And there's
affects,
so much
it affects your brand. It affects your next deal. So you have
And
to
it
keep that in
also
mind.
so much wisdom to be gained. Like
Yes.
I only know this stuff about construction because I was knee deep in the weeds, figuring it out.
And you had to.
I like that you mentioned the word brand. Okay, that's really important in everything that we do, or in all of our agent profiles, okay? You know,
Matthew's email brand. 0.
listen, you know, we have a lot of competition in this industry, and I always say to people when I'm teaching social media, who are you?
Yeah.
Do you even know who you are? 9 times out of 10, I don't get an answer. Who are you? Why are you asking me that question? I know who I am. No, you don't. Okay, so before you can, you know, put a brand together for yourself, right? Identify who you are. What is your differentiator? I mean, we're way off target here, but what is your differentiator? Because that's going to help you. It is a big crisis. Personal crises, right? But this is going to help you moving forward in solving crises or putting yourself out there as an agent generating leads or looking for business, whatever you want to call it. We need to take a break. So we will come right back right after these messages. This is Talking New York Real Estate. Don't go anywhere. Okay, and we are back. So, question, technology. You know, we talk about technology on this program every week. So, dealing with crises, how does technology play a role in, you know, helping to mitigate, creating even more of a problem? Where does technology fall in the whole scheme of crisis management in deals or in just dealing with people in New York City real estate?
I think in line with what we were just talking about before the break, if anything, an ever-increasing reliance on technology actually is a detriment to crisis management. I think in this business specifically, and it's also a reason why, you know, real estate agents will never be fully replaced by algorithms and robots and technology and AI. It's because when push comes to shove and you're up against a wall, that human element and creative problem-solving ability, which cannot be replicated by technology, is usually what actually ends up saving the day and getting the deal done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%. It's about It's just about that relationship, and getting back to this is how you're going to save the deal.
And communication. Hello, communication.
And
is
building
the way
that
to do it.
relationships with management. I'm curious to know, how is your relationship with managing agents?
So I look back, like in 2016, we had such a hard time getting anything done, right? And so I was of the
2016,
camp.
okay.
I would show up at the time, you know, with like the cute little suit and whatever, and I would have like cupcakes and whatever. And I'm going to have to go back to that.
A suit and cupcakes?
Suit and cupcakes, yeah. That can be a whole other. Yeah,
Make them
whole
red
strategy.
velvet cupcakes. You'll get my attention.
But
Absolutely.
I did a video on this because I was like, remember we used to have Baked by Melissa? Does that exist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd show with Baked. Remember it was like hot back then.
Yes.
And so the managing agent just loved it, right? And so I would show up with a cute little face because I was young, and then boom, and they would give me a questionnaire immediately, right? So I think now going back, if you actually look at a financial statement, these buildings are getting paid they're paying the management companies maybe 13 to 30 grand depending on the building, right? And that's not a lot of money when you think about all the work that goes into it.
Yep.
And so then we get all angry. We're like, they're charging us $500, and then I come over here with my bad jokes.
It is
like,
how they make money.
I was like, it's like Spirit Airways, right? They're going to charge you for everything. And so, and it's true, but that's how they make their money. But they're also overworked. And like from a bank perspective, I go back to managing agents probably 6 to 8 times with follow-ups. So if you think about, that's just me, and then you take the attorney, then you take the agent,
you take us,
and then you take the brokers, right? So like,
And there's 150 units in the building.
and 150 units, and there's 10 for sale, right? Yeah. And so we look at all that, and we really got to get back. I think your idea, like exactly what you said, like going in person, we need to get back to that anyways. If you're a listing agent, you need to get in front and say, hey, this is who I am. And diligence is going to go faster. Everything.
We talked about that last week about the listing agent and their reputation or their relationship with the managing agent. I don't even want to get started on managing agents. Okay, that's for another.
I'm just going to say
episode.
that
they're not always easy to work with.
That's something that I started probably 2 decades ago. Every deal that I do, I write a handwritten thank you note to the broker on the other side. Secondly, every deal that has a managing agent, I send them a thank you note and something, and it's usually a Starbucks gift card. And particularly after the pandemic, and it was a long journey for us all to a lot of people lost their jobs. So
this is why we love our Wheezy.
Well, and nothing feels better than to be acknowledged.
Correct.
And so even when they're not good partners, my goal is to kill them with kindness so they think twice about being dismissive.
And the next time you're doing a deal in the building, they're going to remember that was you that gave them the.
I don't really. It's not. I don't have an agenda. It is really more about. I can control how I handle something,
And that's who you are.
and to me, it's about making a little difference in somebody's day.
100%. Speaking of technology,
I don't do it to mortgage guys. Sorry.
AI is all over the place, and every time I turn around on the TV news or wherever, artificial intelligence is starting to scare people, spook people, becoming a crisis in people's minds, meaning, what is this about? How do I handle this? What is it going to do to my business, right? Is it going to replace me? Not necessarily agents, but other people, mainly. How do we deal with that? I mean, I look at it and I'm a little scared of it. I use it from time to time. I'm a little scared of it. I don't necessarily know where it's going to go, and I think the unknown there provides a lot of, concern for people when they're thinking about it from a technology perspective, or, hey, is this going to put me out of my job?
Can I
Will
talk
it?
positives of it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
from the banking side, right, when we think about how many menial tasks, reviewing insurance, reviewing a pay stub, checking for fraud, right? Those are all things that AI is going to help with, because there's a lot of regulation on the banking side. And so when you think about all those things that the regulators require banks to do, right now the average loan is losing $1,300 around the country when they originate it, which is kind of crazy.
$1,300.
Because to originate a mortgage, right?
Yeah, explain
the
that.
cost.
Okay.
Because there's so many people involved: processors,
Got it.
reviewers, underwriters.
Got it.
I mean, you go through it. Like in New York, my New York City loans all lose money, about $1,300, because when you think about how many people they have to pay. So there's an insurance reviewer, an appraiser reviewer, there's an underwriter, there's a processor. I have my team in New York City. Like there's so many people, right? So when you think about what AI can do to start accepting conditions, like it already goes through automated underwriting, which has been around for ages, right? Thanks to Fannie Mae's engine. Now they're going to be able to automatically review conditions. So loans are going to go faster. They're also going to be able to check appraisals for like comps if they're accurate, things like that. So there's going to be a lot of positives here with AI. And then when it comes, so if you think about it, that's going to lower the cost of origination for mortgages, and it's going to streamline to make it faster, which is
But
very
how many
important.
jobs does that cost? Because
So-
if you remember, it's like 13 people at minimum.
Correct.
Just to
So
touch
here's
a
the
deal.
hardship. Now the industry has thinned out so badly. Like there's the back office with this mortgage downturn has cleaned shop. And now they're hiring aggressively, but they're going to be right sizing towards the skilled side. So we're talking underwriters, processors that actually, deal with clients. So I think the stuff that's on the back end, the regulatory piece, the people that are disclosing, I think those are going to be affected. But the people like loan officers, we're not going away. I hate to say it, but have you ever tried to do a Rocket Mortgage and try to do a co-op in New York City? They don't know what the heck they're doing, and you can't AI that,
I didn't even know you could do that.
right? So like,
Rocket mortgage
You
or
really
co-op.
can't.
I need to have therapy on that
and
one.
so, but people
not
try
possible.
it, right?
no,
and
but you
so
can't do that.
I'm safe on it because now my skill set has gone from I'm not doing a regular mortgage. Now with I'm highly skilled in what I do in dealing with local law 11. I can't AI that. So it's just there's a saying, like I love the saying. I don't know who said it, but it's not that AI is going to take over my job, but it will take over the people's jobs that do not use AI.
But I do think that that's a point to be made that if you look at it at a micro level, it's going to take some jobs away in industries, even our industry, right? But at a macro level, I'm seeing companies pop up that are focused on AI. I'm seeing new job opportunities that are popping up.
Correct.
So I think at a macro level, there's going to be new jobs created with this. I know that for instance, just looking at real estate marketing, we can now go in and I can go into our CRM and click, type in one sentence and say, write a newsletter showing
Absolutely.
5 things to do in New York City this
Absolutely.
weekend, and I get an outline. I can say, yeah, that's a little too long for 'em, make it shorter, make
And
it less
you
formal.
and
Then
you
I can
edit
go
it.
in and rewrite
Exactly.
it myself. And that would have taken me, what would have
Hour
taken
and a
me?
half.
The research to find out where those 5 things.
Much
No,
more.
I agree. That's how I use it also, because I think there is a benefit to that. But
What if
there.
the building department used AI? Imagine if
This-
Department
yeah,
of Buildings.
I was going to bring this up, and it sounds so
Good
far-fetched.
luck
but
with that.
And not even the building department, but I'm hopeful that
Department of Buildings we're
someday
talking about.
AI can be used to essentially analyze a building in real time from multiple perspectives, whether it be mechanical, infrastructure, construction quality, financial, and if anything, educate boards and managing agents. Here's a potential problem you will be facing in the next 3 to 5 years based on the following data points, or based on how this issue was resolved in 1997. You might want to look into X, Y, and Z in the next 3 to 5 years. So being able to sort of harness the technology based on prior data points and financial statements to assist with forecasting what can possibly be coming down the pipeline. I hope that someone or some company comes out with a way for buildings to effectively and proactively manage themselves with this as an assistance, rather than relying on the individual expertise of their board members and consulting firms, and then the managing agent who's inundated with paperwork, and you're obviously not the only building they manage. It's sort of it could be a bespoke approach to property management that hasn't really been explored yet.
Is this your calling?
I don't know. I don't think I didn't do so well in computer
Absolutely.
science.
It should be somebody's calling for
But
sure.
I don't see it from the point of view of what we do on a day-to-day basis as an imminent threat, because as we mentioned 8,000 times in the last hour or so, the relationship matters. No algorithm's ever going to be able to replicate that or exceed what we're doing as human beings, because every time things come to a head, introducing that human element always
Makes the difference.
makes a difference in sort of minimizing and alleviating the stress and the tension that's happening currently in the deal.
I totally agree. All right, we have a few minutes left, and I want to talk about one of the biggest crises in my 22-year career in real estate. We had 9/11, but I came in after 9/11, but I don't necessarily consider that a huge crisis. But I'm talking about the COVID-19 pandemic 4 years back, 2020, when, devastating for the loss of people, but devastating for an industry like real estate, where we were locked down, shut down, told we couldn't go to work, offices closed, sitting home, trying to figure it out, trying to understand. Well, people are still emailing me about my listings, and people are still calling me about X or Y. I can talk to them on the phone. I can, Zoom that with them, which began then, thank God. But I can't do anything. I'm stuck in the house. So how did we all manage that from a crisis perspective? And then we came back, and we came back slowly. So what mechanisms did we have in place in our person to make that happen? Because quite frankly, I didn't think that would ever happen or happen so quickly.
Well, who could have seen that? To me, I was so impressed with real estate professionals at that time. It was horrible for everybody. There, like you mentioned, there were so many people lost their lives, and there was so many mental health issues of people just being alone. They couldn't interact with people, and that was hard on a lot of people. But what I saw in the industry from that, we shut down March 12th, and let's call it like May and June, when people started getting.
I think we came back at the end of June.
Well, I came back into my office June 22nd. I think is when it was, when I was back in.
I came in before that.
I called myself the office.
Of course you did.
I called myself the office goldfish, because agents would come in and throw things at me in my glass box, and I back it up. But agents were finding ways. I need to show this apartment in Brooklyn, and they would find a way to go in with a video camera. They'd send the video to folks, and then it was like, so how do I then process this paperwork for the managing agent? And they would find such creative ways to get it done.
I think it's really creative problem solving, 100%.
We
were
very
forced
much
to literally adapt overnight, because I felt like, if anything, there was a lot of positives that came out of the global pandemic, especially for our business. For example, digitizing board packages made our life. Everyone, it was around, but
Thank God for
buildings
that.
were not adopting it,
100%.
and that basically, and putting doing board interviews on Zoom, not having to wait for the first Tuesday every single month at 6 p.m. And if you couldn't make it, you had to wait another month. It really forced the industry to
Efficiency.
propel itself into the present, because it was what we were doing was so labor intensive and unnecessarily so. But I think on a more creative problem solving note, as Doug mentioned, I was showing apartments, whether it was legal or not at the time. I was showing apartments by myself, virtually, like on the floor, counting outlets, showing them every nook and cranny of the space. I was selling real estate virtually throughout the entire pandemic.
People buying sight unseen.
Right,
I had 2
I wasn't
deals
about to move upstate and start making sourdough. I was ready to just keep going because I knew that the minute
I had a huge jar of sourdough.
Oh, see?
That's all I could find. It was like a 2-pound bag.
I did a lot of cooking. Okay, that's
well, no,
fine.
because
Whatever.
the minute you start withdrawing and the minute you start getting scared was the minute that you started possibly developing like mental health crisis as a result of the isolation. So I was trying to, whether it was virtual or 7 feet apart outside, I was staying as interactive as I possibly could with both my business, my friends, and my family.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think crisis management really is very individual. You know, it's up to how we react to certain situations, good or bad, and put, you know, things in place to work through it. I mean, I did the same thing, and I did 2 sales and 1 rental virtually with those people never even coming into the apartment.
Yeah.
So fortunately for technology, you know, we're able to do that. So in that 3 or 4 month period, I thought, well, all right, at least I'm doing something. You know, I'm home and I don't want to be home, but at least I'm doing something, right?
What's interesting is even like the real estate industry here push for things that we have all over the country. Do you know that there's virtual closings everywhere else in the country except for New York?
Right.
So remember they had to get like a huge state mandate to get
Government
right?
petition.
Like a government petition for
I love that I don't have to go to
electronic
closings
notary.
anymore.
Like it was insane,
Electronic notary was a big
right?
deal.
That was a big deal. So I think the one word that comes to mind every single time, no matter if it's COVID, 2007 and 8, 9/11, it's resiliency. And this city, every time it faces a crisis, it comes back stronger than ever. The pricing, and this is where like so many investors want to buy in New York, is because they just look at the trend in the last 30 years, and no matter what gets hit with us, New Yorkers figure out a way because they're resilient and they figure it out.
100%. All right, that's our show for right now, the Table Talk. We're coming right back after these messages with my closing thoughts for the week. All right, everybody, we are back with my closing thoughts for this week. The hustle and the bustle of New York City are defining characteristics that set it apart from all other metropolises. This frenetic energy is palpable as soon as one steps out onto the streets, where the constant flow of pedestrians, honking car horns, or rumbling subways create a symphony of urban life. The city's financial district buzzes with the urgency of high-stakes trading, while Midtown's avenues are lined with people hurrying to meetings, shopping, or catching a Broadway show. Street vendors, food trucks, and impromptu performers add to the lively atmosphere, creating a sense of perpetual motion. The 24/7 nature of New York City ensures that whether it's in the middle of the day or late at night, there's always something happening. This relentless pace can be both exhilarating but also exhausting, drawing people in with the promise of endless opportunities and experiences. It's a city that never sleeps. You've heard that before, driven by the collective energy of its inhabitants who thrive on the fast-paced, ever-changing environment. The hustle and the bustle of New York City encapsulates its spirit of ambition, diversity, and resilience, making it a place where dreams are pursued with relentless vigor. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok at Vince Rocco, or my website, thinkvince.com. Einstein once said, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate, to all of you all around the world, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.